lovely listeners, welcome to A Lift to Work with Tina.
And I'm Kate.
And we are both nurses and NLP practitioners and coaches, and we're offering you a lift to work. So hop in the back, and every episode we'll be helping you with our expertise to solve any issues that are going on for you. Hello, good morning, listeners.
Hello, everybody. So I've just been sat here thinking, oh gosh, I wonder what transportation we're going to have today.
Have you come up with something?
Well, I was thinking a horse and cart, actually. Have we done a horse and cart?
I don't think we have. I think that's a nice idea.
Not a cart, a carriage, because we are queens.
Ah, yes, we are royalty. Everyone listening to the podcast, yes, we are worthy of luxury. So let's get in a nice coach. That sounds excellent.
Right, shall we get to the point of today?
Yes, today in our coach.
Mm-hmm. Yes, in our coach today, we are going to be talking about what to do when you've made a mistake or an error or a folks pax.
Yes. And this is a really good topic because we know our brains spend an awful lot of time thinking about things that have gone wrong, more time than we spend thinking about things that have gone right.
Yes, exactly. And you know why, when something's happened and you've gone, oh no, and then you just, when you think about it all day and you catastrophize it, and oh wowzers. So the point of today is essentially we are going to talk you through a few different techniques that you can use to overcome those feelings when you have made a mistake. And it doesn't matter whether that mistake is in your personal life or your professional life. We will obviously talk about incidents that happen in the healthcare setting, because both Tina and I are exceedingly familiar with dealing with those. So we're going to cover a broad spectrum, and whilst we're doing that, you can have a think of all those times when you've gone, oh
yeah. Because I just want to talk about the word for a minute. So mistake means a mistake. So you attempted something and it didn't go right. It doesn't mean you can't have another take. it doesn't mean that you shouldn't have had a go, because we all have to do things, and by doing things sometimes they go well and sometimes they don't, and you can't live in a paralysis of never doing anything in case you make a mistake. You have to proceed with life. So I always like to say that when the mistakes are made, it's just part of living and being.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And they do take part in all walks of life, because my big question is, before we go any further, is if you never make a mistake, how will you ever learn? And this is a conversation I have with my kids a lot, actually, and it's reminding them that actually sometimes you need mistakes to be able to grow.
Yeah.
And as lovely as it would be to learn from other people's mistakes, life is not that kind, is it, Tina?
No. And you have to have your own lived experience, because it doesn't matter how much wisdom you may glean from others or you have personally acquired. You cannot pass it all on to somebody else, because they have to have their own lived experience. And if you've got young people in your life, you'll know this, But I think the other thing about mistakes is there's loads of science around neuroplasticity. And what we know is that you know, the brain learns from things going wrong. It goes down a route, it has a try at doing something in a certain way, and that doesn't quite get the end result we're looking for. So we do it in a different way, or we do it in a different way. And sometimes that's why when you watch toddlers, I love it. You know, they're trying to build something with maybe a bit of Lego, or they're trying to do something and they're giving it a go and another go and another go, because at that point, they haven't learned the shame of mistakes.
Yeah, I was just going to say that actually, and it's quite a joyous thing, isn't it? Because there's almost this an embarrassment. Oh, I did this wrong, and I didn't do this right, and la 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 la. But how lovely would it be if you could just crack on and be like, oh no,
yeah,
and then carry.
Yeah. And you know, the old Einstein quote, you know, what was it, 99 attempts and one successful light bulb? You know, lots of science and stuff like that just wouldn't happen if people didn't try and try again and give it a different go and do it with and without, you know, factor. And, you know, that's how we explore the world. But for some reason, and I think social media has some part to play in this, you know, making mistakes through learning through doing things and they don't quite work out, has become a real emotional minefield for a lot of people. I mean, teachers do say, Kate, that, you know, kids don't put their hands up to give the answer anymore in case they're wrong. The fear of being wrong is huge.
You know, and that's really interesting, because actually yesterday my big one said to me, she said, I don't like sitting at the front. She said, because if I answer a question and it's not right, I know I've got all of these eyes behind me looking at me and judging me. I'm like, oh man, like she's only 12.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's this massive sense of judgment, isn't there? And I just wish, if I wished anything for humanity, it would be that we had more freedoms around this. And like you're saying, a lot more joy in discovery and a lot less fear. Our issues, I suppose, in healthcare are that some of the things we do might end up being an error with some significance at the end of it.
Yes. And we wanted to do this episode and focus it on healthcare, because the implications of making a mistake can be quite significant, either to the organisation, the patient, relatives, whomever, and yourself. So we wanted to maybe demystify a few things and give you some handy hints. And for those of you that aren't in healthcare, when we make mistakes, it is so important that we own up. First and foremost, absolutely put your hand up and go, I made an error. And I bet your bottom dollar, every single member of staff in an organisation will have made an error at some form in their career.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're human.
Yeah.
We're not robots, and we are human.
Yeah.
And there are so many different factors to take into account. So first and foremost, always remember how brave you are to put your hand up and say, I made a mistake. What can we do about it?
Yeah. Because I think in the moment when you make a mistake, I'm going to give a personal example. You know, there was 2 patients when I was a student nurse, and they had exactly the same name, same Christian name, same surname. Let's call them both Fred Jones. They weren't called that. And they were put in beds next to each other so that we wouldn't get them mixed up in any way. And I went and I gave one of the Fred Joneses his injection. And I said, I'm going to give you your injection, Mr. Jones. And he said, oh, thank you very much, nurse. And as I pulled the needle from his leg, he said, I think I've already had it. I said, have you? And I felt sick. I felt a plummeting feeling in my stomach, kind of physiological feeling of sickness. I picked up his record, which I'd already looked at twice, and he had had it already. And I don't know why my eyes hadn't seen it and my brain hadn't understood it, but it hadn't, because I gave him it again. And I said, okay, I need to just go and talk to the nurse in charge to find out what we need to do about this. I walked away from him and I felt like crying because I knew I'd made a mistake. I was really calm with him, but then I went to the toilet and I had to give myself a little bit of a shakedown because I had to just deeply breathe for a moment and say, gosh, okay, right, you've made a mistake. You know, the best thing to do now is to go and tell someone about it. I went and found the actually really nice about it. She did do a bit of like, why did that happen? And I'm like, I do not know. Can't even explain it to this day, but it did. And the doctor came along. The doctor was very supportive, went to talk to the patient. It turned out that it wasn't the end of the world to have been given a little bit more of this medicine than he actually needed. I could have gleefully strangled him because I wish he'd said I've had it before I gave it him, but I didn't strangle the patient. I just...
Yeah, but all of the listeners are out there going, yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah,
Patient,
so I did just go and apologise. I mean, it was interesting because the nurse in charge said, let me come with you whilst you apologise. And I thought, well, I have said sorry already, but, you know, she made me go through the process, which was absolutely right, of going to see this patient and saying, I'm really sorry, Mr. Jones. You have had too much of your medicine. It was me that gave you the injection. For some reason, the check that I should have done wasn't done properly. And I apologise for, you know, any inconvenience and such like. And he was like, oh, my love, don't worry, you know, crikey, you're all very busy running around. And he was perfectly delightful. But I can't explain, I was a lot younger, Kate, but how much I beat myself up about that. How much I super duper checked, how I thought. I went home that evening and thought I probably would be allowed to be a nurse now because I was a student and I made this mistake. And therefore, I obviously wasn't able to do the job because of this one moment. Of course, you know, here I am with a long career behind me and I was absolutely fine. But for a while, all it was the feelings and the replaying it and the thinking about catastrophizing, as you said earlier, of all the potential consequences. But the one thing I'm proud of, if I would go back in time to that Tina, is that I did just go straight to the place of acknowledging it and asking for help and saying that it had gone wrong.
Yeah. And what did you learn from it?
I learned I had to check more thoroughly. I had to concentrate because I think, although I couldn't say this with certainty, I think I was being distracted by people asking me questions. Yeah. And a lot was going on around me and maybe my concentration wasn't all it should have been.
It's really common though, isn't it?
Yeah.
Distraction. It's a whole human factors thing, which is a whole different show about why we make the mistakes and the reasons behind it. And the important thing is that actually we're open and we're honest and we learn. And obviously we're talking about these errors, these mistakes that don't have life altering results, because that's a whole other ball game. Mistakes that cause significant death, which is significant, but death or significant injury are treated obviously very different and the outcomes are different. But what we wanted to do was really let you know that it's all right, and acknowledging is half the battle. Realizing and recognizing that you've made an error.
Yeah.
And from an organizational point of view, it helps the organization put things in place to mitigate risk.
Yeah.
So let's say, for example, and this is probably one of the biggest errors that happens in a healthcare setting, is medication administration problems. And so if an organisation is aware of this, they can put things in place like the bibs that says, don't talk to me, I'm doing drugs, and or other teachings or other learnings to help mitigate.
Yeah. And I think in those early moments, one of the things that I didn't do it at the time. And I mean, one of my learnings as life went on as a nurse was to really encourage people who've made a mistake to, as soon as they can, to write some stuff down, you know, to just even do a brief reflective account of, I was on duty, this was happening around me, this is what I did, this is what I did, this is what I did, just so you've got that for yourself. Because, you know, it might not be investigated is one word, but learnt from by the whole organisation for months to come, and you will not feel the same, and you might have forgotten some stuff, that there was a fire alarm in the middle of it or whatever. So sit down and write yourself a little kind of remembrance of it, and then when you feel a bit calmer, a day or two later, read it and think, right, what are my learnings? Now I'm feeling less het up about it. So I think writing down is humongous. The other thing that came to mind when you were talking, Kate, was this idea of being open. This is what the NHS call telling patients and families, you know, what's really going on. So, you know, what makes most people cross about any sort of mistake in any industry, whether you know, you just haven't got your flight or whatever it might be, is when people just aren't honest about what's going on.
Yeah.
And this idea of being open is about honesty.
And so this duty of candor that we have makes such a difference with the relationship that you then have with the relative and the family. So moving forward, they can see the differences that are being done, because if there's problems with patient care and blah 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 blah, it's just better.
Yeah. And including and involving them in anything that, you know, down the road where it's been investigated, what's been discovered, and just being really honest. And some of that honesty is difficult to say, you know, we had 4 less nurses around than we should have done. They were in other departments, you know, but if that's the truth, that's the truth. You know, just be honest. And also often asking families what outcome they would like from this. So this has happened. I like the gentleman that had 2 injections, Mr. Jones, you know, it's like the sister said, is there anything we can do to improve the situation? And he said, honestly, it's fine as long as the nurse has learned. And he meant me, you know, and that was all he needed. He didn't need anything else. But I think in mainstream healthcare, we imagine, or our organisations imagine, people want big compensation packages or other things, and sometimes they may wish for that, but generally I think they just want to be included and involved.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And I was going to say something I can't for the life of me remember what it was. Hang on.
While you're thinking, I'm going to ironically talk about organisations with a memory.
Maybe they can share a bit with me. Oh, dear.
We're always doing this, aren't we? What was I going to say? But there was a document came out yonks ago, really, a good 10 years, if not more, called An Organisation with a Memory. And it was just about sharing mistakes across an organisation. So Department A could be making an error in any business and just keeps that to themselves. And then Department C could make the same error the following week, and Department D like 2 months later. So let's not do that. Let's all learn from our mistakes and learn together and share. It could be that a product's faulty. It could be that, you know, 2 things that you use often are both have the same colour, and maybe if one was made in a different colour, you wouldn't get them mixed up, you know. Those kind of things. But yeah, an organisation with a memory is about sharing organisational learning based on mistakes, really.
And I think I've remembered what I was going to say.
I see.
I know, right? So what I was going to say was, if you have or when you do make a mistake and you want to talk to somebody about it, it's not, instead of your written reflective piece, or as well as having that debrief can be really, really useful. And it's remembering that the person on the other end that's listening to you is not there to judge. They're not there to pass judgment on what you have and or haven't done. It's about allowing you to get the learnings from it, and the questions will be, what will you have done differently? So next time, what will you do differently?
Yeah.
Always an excellent question to ask.
Yeah. And depending where you work, you can look up something called root cause analysis, and there are all these very useful tools like fishbones that you kind of write the issue in the middle, and then outside you kind of look at all the different factors. So what was going on with the people, what was going on with the equipment, the environment, etc. And you might pick up different things, and you might say, well, that medicine's errors because the nurse was disturbed all the time, or the drugs have two similar names, or the paperwork is too the lines are too squished up together, you can't read them properly. You know, there could be all sorts of things. Some of them will be about the humans but some of them will be other stuff. And so you can do some really great analysis and diving into mistakes and learning tons of great things from them, actually.
Yeah. And before we scoot off, one of the other best things that you can do is Tina, give me a sec. Honestly, what was I going to say? Oh yes, I remember. Is acknowledge.
Yeah.
And so you've done all of this work. You've done your debrief. You've done your piece. But from a coaching, from an NLP point of view, is say to yourself, I made this mistake, I've done this learning, and now I'm going to put it there and move on.
Exactly, with kindness to yourself. You do not need to keep revisiting it. I think what you say is so true. And to end with ourselves as humans and how we feel is, if you've been part of that, if someone else had made the mistake, you would allow them to move on from it. You would help them to learn. You would acknowledge that they do loads of good stuff every day, and this was just one instance. And you'd want them to be kind to themselves, and they will grow from it and be stronger as a result. So, end with kindness, I think. Great tip. Well done, Kate.
I knew I knew it was in there somewhere.
It was in there. So, thanks for listening, everybody. We can let you get off our transportation now. You can get out of the carriage. Do be careful of anything the horses may have done along the way. And we will see you next time. Take care.
Take care, everybody. Have an amazing day.
Bye-bye. To A Lift to Work, please subscribe, share with your friends, and follow us.
Make your comments below. So this is a quick disclaimer from us that just says that whilst we are registered practitioners, if you have listened to anything that has caused a trigger, or you feel like you need medical attention or support, please go and see your GP or other registered healthcare professional.
Absolutely, because this podcast is for educational and fun reasons. Thank you, everyone.
Lots of fun.
Bye.